Hello friends and welcome back for another episode of Indie Impressions. My name is Nick and today we're going to be checking out a global game jam entry called Antitheos by developer Hyperbolic Magnetism. It's a little bit of a difficult one to explain, but I will try my best. So essentially what we're going to be doing today, it's a bit of an action platform with a score attack mechanic, and there's also a card system thrown on top of that. And I know that sounds very chaotic and bizarre, and well, it kind of is, but it's also quite unique and original. And I will actually, well, try and explain it as we go. But before we start, I just want to let you know that it's a global game jam entry. Like I said, it doesn't quite have sound or music, so just be aware it's going to be rather quiet, and there will be a bit of click-clacking on my keyboard as I jump around and do my best to stay alive in this game. Hopefully that doesn't take off too many marks, because honestly the idea is very cool, and I hope to see this get developed further if the developers have any intent on that. So you've probably read by now the instructions that have been on the screen for quite a while now. So there's a timer. Timer's going to go down to 0. As that happens, we will also be collecting and looking for cards. Cards are our HP in this situation, and every time the timer runs out to 0, it will grant us the ability to use one of those cards, and each one imparts a positive and a negative attribute on things. For example, I might get three-way fire from my mage, and in the other direction, I might also get a grayscale tone over the whole screen, or enemies might get stronger, something like that. So basically, we're trying to balance running for our lives to get points and kill enemies and grab cards to replenish our HP, while also trying to pick the right card for the right moment to keep things going and not spiral down too fast. And honestly, it's very frantic, so I wanted to explain this all before we started. But here we go. Let's just jump into it and give it a shot. So here is our mage character. We actually were very lucky to spawn directly next to a card. You'll see that it'll pop down at the bottom of the screen. And there's a little arrow there that's going to show us where the next card happens to be. I'm just going to try and follow the arrow to the best of my ability and probably fire at just about everything I see along the way, because there's really no reason not to. There's no downside to using your mage fire a lot, honestly. You might as well just go. So here's our first card choice. What do we do now? We have slower walking enemies versus crippled fire staff, slower walking enemies versus can't shoot through walls, shoot through shields versus faster walking enemies, weaker enemies versus faster walking enemies, remove negative screen effect for faster walking enemies. So some of them actually cancel out previous effects from the other cards, and honestly, these are not the best, but, you know, shoot through shields, pretty helpful, especially you can see those giant, whatever these are, like aardvark dudes that I'm fighting against here. And I just took a bit of damage, which actually removed one of my cards from me, and I'm actually going in the wrong direction now, so let's head back to where the arrow's pointing us. I really like the graphical styles, as it feels kind of like an old Sega Genesis game in a way, and I can almost hear the sound effects as if they existed. They just seem like they would be very visceral and a little bit crunchy, perhaps. Oh god, I'm about to run out of time. Alright, so we took some hits, so we have less cards to choose from here. Slower walking enemies versus crippled fire staff, weaker enemies, faster walking enemies, remove negative... Well, I don't have a screen effect, so I guess we're going to pick weaker enemies for faster walking. They can walk as fast as they want. It's kind of fine with me. So, yeah, that didn't really work out. I'm having a little bit of trouble trying to make this jump over here, because there's like a little bit of a hang effect. Oh my god. Do I actually have a double jump? Did I just realize? I think I actually have a double jump. So if I lose this last 8 seconds or get hit by a bat, I'm just dead. And I keep falling off this rope and I can't seem to make that happen. Oh, I made it in the last second. Wow. All right, so I stayed alive. Faster shooting versus shorter card pick interval, which means that I have less time to get to the next card. Or slower walking enemies. Well, probably not the best option, honestly, but I'm going to pick this one anyway and hope that the next card is right here. Generally, these games tend to not last very long, especially since the iframes on your character don't seem to stick around for particularly long either. And there's a lot of enemies with a lot of varying effects going on at the same time, and honestly, like, the lack of auditory feedback makes it a little harder to parse what's going on in some cases. I think generally being able to hear what's happening would be able to sort of give you a better sense of, like, hierarchy as to what you need to be doing from moment to moment. So slower walking enemies or weaker enemies versus enable enemy shields. What does that mean? So, like, if I could shoot through shields, then the shields come back? Is that what that is? Yep, that's what that does. Okay, so, yeah, now we need to make it back up in 18 seconds. Also can't get hit by anything. If I get hit, I'm dead. If I run out of time, I'm dead. And my score is 132 right now, which is not particularly fantastic. Oh, god! That was very close. I probably should have died there, but I actually made it to yet another card. I'm trying to play a little bit more meticulously than I have in prior runs, and it seems to be paying off because I'm lasting a bit longer than I expected. Weaker enemies, slower shooting, or slower walking enemies. We're just going to stick with weaker. Okay, or I'll just walk in front of that one. Fair enough. So that was my first run on Antitheos. I think this game is actually really fun. I'm going to do another one, actually, because it seems a bit short to cut us off there. I'm imagining all the possibilities if you get really crazy with, like, all the various projectile effects or just in general, like, all the various things that could affect the game positively and negatively. I think you can actually see, hopefully this time when we draw, there'll be some kind of, like, screen effects or weird things like that that'll mess with us a bit. So what do we have this time? Slower walking enemies versus shorter card pick interval. Weaker enemies versus weaker fireballs. That's interesting. It almost cancels itself out, doesn't it? Shoot through shields versus can't shoot through walls. Stronger fireballs enable enemy shields or faster shooting screen blur. We'll just put this on for the sake of novelty so you can see what that looks like. It's a pretty annoying effect, to be perfectly honest. I think this actually is maybe a little bit imbalanced for the amount of difficulty that it causes you versus, well, what I got out of the deal, but, you know, I did pick it, so let's be honest, I am still to blame there. But I'm imagining this is sort of like a super crate box situation, and maybe there'd be a whole series of levels that would unlock one at a time. Maybe you could play as different characters with different projectiles, or maybe you'd unlock new projectiles as you go. Honestly, I'm just, like, really psyched to see more of this art style with this premise, because it feels really good. The controls, obviously, like, need a little bit of work. As I mentioned, with that rope situation was not really ideal. But I feel like that's something that could definitely happen, given that this was a Global Game Jam entry. They didn't have very long to work on it, and I'm sure in crunch time a lot of things like, obviously, the sound and music ended up getting forgotten, or forgone, rather, not forgotten. So yeah, with a little bit more time, I think this could be really, really, really good. So shoot through walls versus stronger enemies, shoot through shields, can't shoot through walls. I want to see shoot through shields and can't shoot through shields in the same one. That would be a fun time, I'm sure. Yeah, let's go shoot through shields, I guess. I also kind of really appreciate the fact that you actually have time to, like, sit and look at everything when you get to the card choice. I also can't believe that I didn't realize I had double jump. That almost seems like a thing you might want to unlock by the cards, even. As long as there's enough avenues to get around in the environment that's actually acceptable, that you wouldn't be able to double jump. If that's the case, I think you go nuts with it. And also just, like, make there be a ton of exotic and strange effects that can happen. Things that can, like, really screw up your game in weird ways that can just show up out of nowhere. Things that can really save your game right out of nowhere as well. Weaker enemies, weaker fireball, slower walking enemies, crippled fire staff. I don't know what crippled fire staff does. Seems not terrible, honestly. Still seems like it's getting the job done for the most part. There's a card right there. I just need to get through this massive torrent of bats. And, well, I had a card and I lost it instantly, and I'm actually going the wrong direction now. It's funny, actually, since I didn't realize I had double jump for the first time I was playing this, I thought that the traversal mechanic was, like, way harder than it needed to be, and now that I've realized that, it's kind of a different story. Longer card interval versus crippled fire staff or weaker enemies, weaker fireballs. I guess we'll take weaker enemies this time, especially because I really could use, well, all the time I can get here. Was that even one of the options? I don't remember. All right, let's go down carefully. Going down is a really bad idea generally because you could just jump on top of something and then find yourself mobbed by the time you see what you're doing. We did get a card and again instantly lost it, and I think I'm about to just wander into the enemy fire here. Yeah, alright, well I guess I got hit. I don't even know what hit me there. Maybe one of those projectiles or something. So yeah, that's going to be Antitheos. I have very positive impressions of this. I'd really like to see this develop further, and I think if this did get developed further, so that's maybe there's a little bit of a progression mechanic or some unlocks or something to just make it feel like there's a little bit more meat to the game. Obviously, the sound effects and music, and then, you know, work on the controls a little bit. I know it sounds like a lot of things, but in the scheme of things, like, it's most of the way there already. Just needs to add a little bit more longevity. I could easily see this being like a $5 or $10 game on Steam, and I would spring for it in no time. And I would recommend it to people, too, because I think this is a really interesting and original premise. And I haven't really seen a lot of people try something that's this far out of the box. It's like, well, here's a tried and true mechanic, and let's just throw this big spin on it. Well, I guess Hand of Fate kind of goes in that direction as well, doesn't it? But this is very much fast-paced. Hand of Fate is like a board game in a way, with some combat thrown in certain points. But anyway, I digress. That was Antitheos. Go check it out for free yourself if you'd like. There will be a link that lets you play right in your browser. I recommend you do so. Leave me a comment and let me know what you think about this in general. What kind of improvements might you make? Besides some of the obvious ones that I mentioned. Of course, if you have anything to contribute to a discussion, I'd love to hear it. And of course, leave a like on the video if you don't mind. I do appreciate every single one of them. And I will be back again tomorrow. New episodes of Indie Impressions go up every single day, so look forward to bringing you another one then. Hope to see you here, and I hope you have a fantastic night. Talk to you all later.